What is up, y'all? Welcome to Chosen Price Chats. Today I'm joined by Rob, better known as Vintage Packs on Instagram and Island Collect LLC on eBay. How you doing today, Rob?
What's going on, man? I'm all right. Hope you're well. Vintage packs in
Oh, I'm
action,
doing well.
you could say.
Vintage Packs in action. Yes, absolutely. We are here. We are here. And yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it, man. Like I said, your island collects on eBay. Is that what you do full time?
I do. I sell full time on eBay right now. It's not a full Pokemon business. I've, over the past year, been transitioning it that way. I've always kind of sold online, but like a while back, a lot of things changed. My father passed away. There were a lot of different angles I had to tackle, and he was a collector. And he had a storage unit, and I was faced with the decision: do I sell this storage unit to like a picker, or do I just become the seller now? So I just started doing that, and along the way I started more focusing on comics, but it's a little too expensive to be a comic dealer, to just put it frankly. Like, I'm not ingrained in it like that, the way that I know how to move Pokemon cards and cards. I was always flipping cards on eBay for many, many years, like 10 years or so. Originally to fund just like my Magic the Gathering habits. I used to play at like a not super competitive level, but like a pretty competitive level. And I used to play a lot, and I would go home with the cards I won and the packs I won, and I would sell them. And that's kind of where it started. That was after college.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, at that time, I also sold a lot of my Pokemon collection from when I was a child. But it is
Yeah.
what it is. We're back now. So yeah, I do sell full
Oh
time.
yeah.
It's a lot of vintage books, comics, vinyls, and primarily Pokemon cards.
Nice. Yeah, I was giving your eBay store a little like browsing, and I noticed you had like a ton more than Pokemon cards. So I'm curious, why do you keep, I guess, vintage packs strictly Pokemon?
Well, that was because Vintage Packs was just like a random Instagram handle I had for a while that I just like put on hold. I was like, I think that's a good name for like something in the future, whether it be Magic or whatever. Originally, I was just going to post sealed product on there, like sealed vintage product. And if you go all the way back, my first three posts are that. They're like Magic the Gathering, like starter decks. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But then I just started to like Pokemon a lot again as I was like buying collections. And I was like, you know what? I kind of just want to have a Pokemon page because I do want my business to one day only be Pokemon. So, like, I'll just funnel it that way. I'll build this little community side of it while I'm funneling and like moving through the inventory that I already have and transitioning it basically all into Pokemon, which it will be.
Oh wow, that's awesome. So I guess I kind of wanted to touch on comics because, you brought it up now and we talked about it a little bit just in messages on Instagram. I guess what are the challenges with moving comics as opposed to Pokemon
They're a
cards?
lot more cumbersome. They take up a lot more space, which I don't have that kind of space to be. You know what I mean? I can
Mm,
have hundreds, thousands of Pokemon cards. Dollar wise, way more ever, storage for Pokemon than I could a comic. Like a comic box is like, you know, that's like some comic storage just like right there in the middle of the room. And it's like those boxes though, like a little box like this is like just as many listings of Pokemon. So
yep.
it's not as possible for me physically to do it, you know. It's going to be much harder to ever have a huge inventory of comics than it would be for cards in my estimation. Also, the market is tougher in comics right now,
Okay.
which is just it has been on a decline for a while. And I do think in the far future, and this is getting a little heady maybe and in the weeds, that like comics are on the decline and trading cards are on the incline, you know? But that's like a
Hmm.
whole nother conversation. And that has to do, in my opinion, with age groups. And I just know I'm one of the only people that I know from my age group and lower who likes comic books. So when I'm older, who's going to buy those? You know?
Hmm.
Cards, though, are huge for
Yeah.
among every age group, all the way down to like little kids, you know? So there's still like many, many years where those kids will still have nostalgic sentiments in the future and want to come back to the cars that they liked, you know? Where comics, we don't really have that. We have the movies. People argue that, like, oh no, well, like, people are going to want the first appearance of like the character they saw in the Marvel movie with their mom when they were a kid or whatever. And like, that might be true, but they didn't have the physical card. Like, they're not going to have that attachment to when I see like the Entei from Aquapolis that I pulled when I was a kid and I sold after college, and now I'm like, I wish how do I not have that? Like, I can't believe I don't have that, you know? And I'm not, and I'm like in the back of my mind always like, I gotta get a nice copy of that one day, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good point and something that's really important to think about, especially when you're, making your livelihood out of this. Like if that's what you want your future to be, that's definitely something important to note. And I think that's a really good point because that is a huge
Yeah,
part of the
simply, I
trading
just
cards
think
for me.
trading card games, not to talk over you, sorry, but I just think they have more
Oh, you're good.
longevity. It's also
Absolutely.
cutting a little bit, so it's hard to tell exactly when you're starting to talk. But we'll
No,
work through.
yeah, absolutely. But so I guess what are some, we talked in the DMs also about some parallels you can draw from like comic collecting to, I guess, the Pokemon card. And you said it's even more so than sports cards, which a lot of people like to compare Pokemon cards to.
Yeah, when I thought back, I regretted maybe saying more so because I don't actually know sports cards enough to say that it's more so, you know? I did think about that
Sure.
after, but I can speak to the fact that there are a lot of parallels to comics, you know? I don't want to take anything away from the sports cards because I actually don't know enough to say that, but I will
Yeah.
say that the history of comics and the history of cards is like strikingly parallel to me. Just starting with like if you take like the way that at least Pokemon started in like 1999, and then if you look at how Action 1, which is the first appearance of Superman, that was released, there was a huge spike of popularity and then a sharp decline. And about 20 years later, in both instances, there was a somewhat of a resurgence. And then there is somewhat of a grail that even comes out of those resurgences, which is for comics, it's Fantastic Four #1, or you maybe Amazing Fantasy 15, probably, which is the first appearance of Spider-Man. That happens in about
Mm,
1963 and 64, which is about 20 years after, or 22 years after Action 1, in like late 30s, early 40s. I don't know the exact date of that because that's a book that is way out of my reach. That's like a multi-million-dollar book. But the point being is that over time, this like map way just seems to be almost exactly the same, even to like the date of years, where there's a huge spike of popularity at the offset, huge crash, goes away for a while, nostalgic resurgence with new grails, such as maybe you could do like Moonbryon is a nice equivalent to like an Amazing Fantasy 15, like the first appearance of Spider-Man, a book that outperforms the market to like degrees that make no sense, just off the bat and probably will into the future.
hmm.
And then even the next step in comic books became grading, and with grading became restoration, which is a problem that people are tackling now. And that problem is resolved in comics, actually. They get a different label, and oftentimes the price reflects that, you know, as it being a not original piece. It's looked at more in comic books as if it was almost like something was refurbished, you know, like if your car gets into an accident and it gets like
Hmm.
rebuilt, you disclose that at the point of sale, you're going to get less for it. And
Yep.
comic books in the realm of restoration, that's kind of how it's treated. Less like a preservative thing and more of like a refurbishment to the book. So there's just a lot of things, starting from the beginning to the crash to the resurgence to the eventual grading and then now restoration, where it's literally just paralleling the timeline, you know? To me,
Yeah.
it almost
Dude,
seems
that
one to one.
is
Maybe the years aren't perfect, but it's going through the same processes and it's coming to the same point of like the graded units are pretty much getting the premiums, and the same questions have to be tackled along the way, you know?
Yeah, that is super interesting and super like very good parallels. Like, wow. So I guess along those lines, and I think you already kind of mentioned it with the physical, having it physical in hand at this point. So do you think because like the heroes, like the superheroes, have moved kind of into the movie industry more so than the comic book industry? Do you think that's why, you know, Pokemon cards are going to keep going? Is because, we keep handing our kids Pokemon cards, so to speak, or winning the next generation Pokemon cards, so to speak, but we're not handling the next generation comic books per se.
Yeah, nobody buys really. No, I'm not going to say nobody, but the market for modern, like, go on the Wednesday, get your stack of like new comic books is very small. And the majority of
Mm,
people who are doing that are older. The thing, the kids are opening packs and loving it. Like they have like an attachment, an emotional attachment to where maybe, they don't have the same to go into the movies. Now, I still do think some books will always, like the first appearance of Spider-Man is always going to be millions, like not millions, but hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars, depending on the grade. It's always just going to be in that range, you know?
for
But
sure.
the smaller keys, the things like there's, Spider-Man will probably stand the test of time, but I can't guarantee that every character will, you know? I mean, I
Yeah,
can't
that makes
guarantee
sense.
Spider-Man will, but it's just like Superman. Even Superman has had a fall in popularity over the past 20 years, you know? Most people like
Oh yeah.
Batman. It's just a fact. And
Yeah, dude, people love
that might have to do
Batman.
with society. It might have to do with society because of like, Superman is such a light-hearted, not light-hearted, but he's much more positive, and there's not much darkness in the Superman books, where it's like
Absolutely.
Metropolis, it's futuristic, it's forward. And then Batman is Gotham, it's dark, it's the city, it's the underbelly. So people like to say maybe that the difference in opinion on these characters has to do with the difference in opinion of the state of the world as it has changed, you know?
Dude, yeah.
Interesting.
I could yeah, that's super interesting. I could absolutely see that. You know, kind of moving into, other things from your childhood, or I guess, maybe that you came up with. Definitely be, before we dive right into Pokemon, gotta touch on Bionicles.
Oh yeah, I've
What
always loved Chronicles.
Yeah, dude. I love your pictures of Pokemon cards and Bionicles. I think that was like a huge part of a lot of people's childhoods. And I gotta ask, is there like a collectible market for Bionicles? Have you ever tried selling Bionicles, or is that just something that you keep around because you love them?
I It's one of those things that I was like a year or two ago was like, what hasn't like popped back off yet? I was like, Bionicles. Like nobody talks about Bionicles. So I bought like a few lots, like full lots of sets, and I do
Yeah.
just piece them off and sell them as interest kind of comes back for them. They are going up in value a little bit compared to where they were a year ago. But I mostly try to just snipe like high condition, full complete sets and then sell them pieced out as full complete in canister figures and get like a premium on them that way.
Yeah.
But I also collect. I collect the Kopakas and the Hollies, like the whites and the blue ones, because those are the ones I didn't have as a kid that I thought were the coolest. So now I try to like keep upgrading and get like a nicer version of each of those.
Oh, that's super interesting. So you had like all the other elements, but you didn't have like the ice ones or the water ones when you were growing
Yeah,
up?
they were as a kid. They never had the white or the blue ones in the stores I would go to. Like,
Huh.
and I always thought the white one with the sword and the shield Kopaka was like the coolest from like the Nuva, and same thing with the water one Holly because she had like the spinners on the feet and stuff and the hooks, and I thought that was
Yes.
really cool. But yeah, no, those I had, and I never had the black one either. But I don't really think the black one's that cool now, to be completely
So,
honest.
oh yeah. So is it mostly the like original series of Bionicles for you that you're interested in, or is
As
it
a
like,
kid, I had almost every one from almost every series. I collected. I even yeah, I had a lot of them as a kid. As far as now, I just buy the sets and flip them because it's hard to. There's not much of a market for the niche ones. You know what I mean? Like I only see like consistent sales on like the first two sets really. And
Oh
the
wow.
what are they called? The name the bow rock, the ones where the head shoots out. I wish I had one here to bring you back on it.
Oh, where you like
You
slap the back and
slap the
they kind
back
of
and the
shoot
head.
forward?
Yeah, those
Yep.
two. People like those still.
Dude, yeah. And they are those the ones that like ball up too and they just
They
roll
ball
around?
up and then they have
Yep.
like the gel thing in the head that's like the mask.
Oh
Yeah, those
yeah,
are
yeah. Those were sick. Yep. Oh my
those are
gosh.
so yeah, that those three lines I think are the ones that like hold the most nostalgic value and are the least niche. You know, I know the stuff after that, but I don't see it selling as much, and it's
Yeah.
expensive.
Yeah, that
uh,
makes sense. But that's super cool. I love seeing your like I love seeing people combine things that they like with Pokemon cards like
yeah, I want to make a reel one day where like two Bionicles fight over like a card or something, but it's going to take a little time, you know.
oh
Do like a
yeah.
stop action, like just take like a million little cuts of them, like swinging at each other.
Oh my gosh. That'd be sick. That is very time
Now I have to
consuming
do it
though.
before like one of your viewers does it.
Hey, you're the only person I've seen that actually does Bionicles and Pokemon though, so I think you got time. I think you got time.
True. True.
But yeah, just I guess getting back more into the Pokemon side of things, where did Pokemon kind of start for you as like a kid in your childhood?
1999. My mom and I tried to complete the first 150 Pokemon between the first three sets, and then ended up also adding Rocket to. We used Dark Pokemon as well. It was just trying to get one of each, you know. And then they added
Hmm.
Mew. I remember them adding Mew and being like, "Mom, there's another one. Like, there's another one." Like,
Yeah.
damn. I just was looking at this before. Like my last remaining page from my binder from my childhood is here. Everything else I sold sadly along the way, but you know, I got some stuff. I got that.
Oh
You
my
know, I got
gosh.
that. These are like I got the legendary collection, Vaporeon and Flareon.
Oh, are
You
those
know,
like the hollows too from the Legendary Collection?
yeah,
Or
that's the funny story I'm going to tell right now. Is I used to go shopping with my mom at Wallbounds when I was young. I'd just like sit in the cart with her, and on the way out there would be a vending machine, and like every now and again I would convince her to get me a pack. And the hollows from that pack, my entire life, I was always arguing with people. They were always like, "Those are the fake ones. Those are the sticker cars or whatever." And I was like, "No, I promise you, I got them in a real pack." And like, this is the card. And like people always tried to convince me was fake and
oh
to
my
throw it out.
gosh.
And so when I
That's
started
so
getting,
funny.
yeah, these are the remainder. So you know, they were legendary collection packs in the vending machine, like, um,
That's
that I
insane.
used to get on the way out of the store. Yeah, how crazy is that? Like, and I think I had more too. These are just the only two that were left because they're creased, so I never sold them because they weren't worth much when I was looking at it. In fact, when I sold all my entire collection, besides these cars I'm showing you, the Charizard was only worth $20. And I remember
Like,
looking at it, and that's when I had one of those parallel moments to comic books, and I was like, it's not worth $20 in like 10 years, you know. Like I just kind of knew from like Amazing Fantasy, like I'm saying, like these things do have spikes eventually, you know. And so that, you know, I'm glad that I did that, especially because my mom bought me that Charizard, and I remember like the moment she gave it to me, so I would
mhm.
feel like really lost. I feel like if I didn't have that, at least, you know.
Yeah. Wait, is that the so was that the Legendary Collection Charizard that was
I had one of those non-hollow that I sold, but no, it's
oh
just a base set unlimited Charizard.
oh yeah.
That she got me when we were trying to do the 150, that I almost sold for $20.
Oh, good choice. Good choice. Man, you saw the writing on the wall. That's awesome.
That's what I'm saying by the comic book parallel does come in handy sometimes because it told me don't sell the Charizard. That was the most expensive one. Just put it away. You know, like
Absolutely. That's awesome. So I guess you said you've been doing this for about 10 years or maybe more at this point. So where did you just continue with Pokemon until you started selling or where'd you pick back up?
I was like I was in Pokemon like for a while. Like I remember opening Skyridge and Aquapolis packs. So I had at least made it from 1999 to whenever that was, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And then I know then when I moved to middle school, I had moved, but my friend and I used to go to the corner store and use the leftover from our lunch money to buy one of the Delta species packs. I don't remember which pack it was, but I remember him pulling like this card that wasn't the same type. It was like a crazy hollow, and we were just like, "What is this?" Like eating like sour candy on the side of the road. So like, I've always kind of like poked back in along the way. Like I have opened. I remember there was like a fire red leaf green theme deck that I had gotten once that like got me back into it for a while that I don't have anymore, and it came with like a million Charizards, and none of them do I have anymore. Like it was like, yeah, it came with the non-holographic. I just saw it online the other day. This Charizard that was in the theme deck, which was sick because it was like a Venusaur versus Charizard deck for the fire red leaf green.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah. So I was always into that, but then it changed. I got into as I grew older, I got into playing Magic. So Magic kind of took over the card person in me for many years, like many, many years, and
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon definitely moved to the side. But I always played the games. Like in college, I played the games and everything like that. And it was always I've never like disliked Pokemon. I never like wrote it off as something that was like childish or silly, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But we all go through phases and stuff. So it
Yeah.
was back and forth. And the fact that Magic felt like more of a game that I can connect with playing, it definitely took me for a long time. And my primary collecting was Magic for many, many, many years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of saw that because I always scroll back on people's Instagram, so I saw those first three Magic posts, and I thought that was really interesting because, vintage packs is basically strictly Pokemon. So, uh, I love Magic
But it
myself
wasn't. It was
also.
the name. You do play Magic?
I
You
play
play?
very, very limited. I like to play sealed. Like I'll do drafts with my friend, but I don't really do
Yeah, that's what I
constructed.
used. Same. I'm a limited player. I used to like try to get, you know, top 20 in the ladder like every single season or whatever. Like that's like where I was playing at. But yeah, so that's how it transitions. So you see like how I said before it started selling with Magic, so it goes from that
Hmm.
becoming like a really deep into Magic collecting and playing to getting out of college and wanting to fun playing it so that I became like a mini dealer of it, you know,
Yeah.
which then after, like I said, my father passed, I was like, all right, I'm just going to be a seller of antique things, vintage things. And now it's more like, I want to just be Pokemon. Like, that's just what I feel like I want to do, you know?
Yeah. So I guess as are you still playing Magic or are you talking about you just want to sell Pokemon?
I'm on like a little bit of a break from playing Magic because I don't love the way that the game is going. But
Hmm.
yeah, primarily sell Pokemon. I mean, obviously, I'll still sell Magic and still sell a little bit of all card games, but I want it to be focused on Pokemon. And I want to get out of the other niches that I have on my page, you know,
For sure.
and try to transition out of the first edition books and the comics. They're so cumbersome. You think comics are cumbersome? Books are like, you know,
I can't even
so.
imagine. I mean, that's why I don't sell sealed stuff is because I'd just rather ship like a single card. Like I don't even want to deal with sealed stuff, so I can imagine selling books and stuff like that that are super fragile, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
uh I guess along the lines, interesting, you're like the first person that has really like been into Magic and Pokemon. So going back to more parallels and I guess more of an opinion, what do you think of like how they've separated rarity with Magic? I feel like before maybe 4 or 5 years back, they didn't really have those like different versions. Like we have the V's, the altarts, and stuff like that. And now in Magic, they have the showcases, the borderless. How do you feel about that stuff?
I think I'm not the biggest fan of it, to just be quite frank.
Yeah.
And especially as someone who like to play in paper, it just makes it more confusing for me. Like when there's like 7 different versions of every card. Even playing on Arena, it's a little difficult sometimes when there's like 6 versions of a card and people are playing it, and like the game was always very based on imagery from what I would gather and play and see from people. Like you see the picture, you know what the card does. So if there's 6 different pictures for a card, it's like, well, now we're just reading cards, and as they're doing that, they're also adding text to the cards. Like the cards are going from 1 line of text to 3 lines of text each, and it's becoming a much more cumbersome game, if that makes sense, where it used to be a lot more simple to me. I used to love the elegance and simplicity of the cards, the mechanics, and the way that it played out.
Yeah,
Where now it's becoming much more complex with the art, complex with the mechanics in a way that I don't think is um, intriguing. It's just confusing, and it also is just becoming more complex in the way that it plays out because of these things. So
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I feel like I hear a lot of the same things. I only have one other good friend who plays Magic, and he's always talking like the power creep. Like the cards, just common cards have like 5 lines of text now instead of like, this card has Death Touch, or like this card does this, taps for this. It's like this card does this, 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 and this, and it's crazy.
and if I may, it's not power creep in a way that is like ingenious. Like they're not coming up with new concepts that are making the game more complex. They're
Hmm.
just adding lines of text to the card.
Yes.
So instead of it being like Death Touch plus some new interesting thing, it's like Death Touch, Lifelink, Flying, Trample. And then also when it dies, you get a token back that's the same thing 3 turns later.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like
Yeah,
it's just like, whoa, okay. It's just like an overload of random things that, you know what I mean? It's like it doesn't connect with me the same way as maybe when they used to make a complex, powerful card that you would have to actually think of and apply some kind of strategy to get the benefit from, you know? Instead, it's just like, we're just going to add lines to make it better,
for sure.
you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, I guess more towards Pokemon again. Uh, you never really found the card game as good. I mean, I guess moving back towards Pokemon, it is a little more simple than Magic, especially at this point.
I didn't try it until like 2 years ago when I got the Pokemon card game, trading card game for the Game Boy. That's how I
Ooh,
actually, the first time I tried the game. I kind of I don't dislike it. I played on the online. I played a few rounds and I thought it was kind of fun.
hmm.
It just was not something I was ever taught or got into as a kid, I guess,
Oh
you
yeah.
know. I I, I don't even think it's a bad game. I think it's actually pretty fun.
Oh yeah.
My friend used to work on the trading card game line. He used to code for it on the thing, so I kind of like I always kind of knew about it. I never really felt any negative way about it. It's just Magic was just what I learned when I was like I've been playing since I was like really young, you know. So
Yeah,
it's just always been part of it. You know, collecting was Pokemon and then playing was Magic, you know.
absolutely. So, as like a full-time seller, what is what are you collecting still? You still like collecting Pokemon at this point?
It's I put things to the side, you know.
Hmm.
I try not to be so much of a collector anymore besides like just keeping what I had from when I was a kid. It's kind of hard to break that because I was always a collector. I've been a collector like my whole life basically. I've always had things just like stored in the closets, you know. And like yeah, that's one thing that I did need discipline on and I needed to break, and I don't collect as much anymore. I just stopped. I was trying to get every vending series 3 and a CGC 10, and I'm just like I'd rather just put money into the business. I don't really need this, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely relate. I started doing like the chosen price eBay, and I kind of, I have what's on my shelf behind me, but I kind of stopped adding to it because it's just to me, I feel like if the card passes through your hands, that's enough. Like you get to enjoy it, you get to see it, and you get to,
Exactly.
move it on to the next person. So I can really relate to that. It's just a fun way to own cards for a brief amount of time, basically.
And if you have an Instagram, you get to document it and you still have it there to look at, you know? And
Exactly.
that kind of helps me too. It's like I have a picture of every single card I ever thought was cool that I sold, and I could just scroll through them, you know?
Yeah.
I don't need the physical card necessarily.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because I was
Unless it's
oh, go ahead.
no, sorry, just finish
Oh
your
yeah.
thought.
It's funny you say that because I was just, saw someone's story yesterday that was like explaining that. They were like, sometimes I feel like I don't even need to look at my collection. I can just scroll through my Instagram feed and see all these memories of cards and kind of get the same effect from it. So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it's like I have a huge collection. It's my inventory, you know? It's just always for sale and always rotating.
Yeah.
I don't need like my personal collection. I have everything around me and it comes and it goes and new things come in and it's still mine even if it's under the business, and I think it's healthier to kind of have that. And I was watching like a big toy stores podcast the other day, and that was like the conundrum that the owner was in at one point. He's like, I have all this stuff, I'll just make it my inventory, and then it's no longer like I'm burdening myself with this collection. It's making me money, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it. And I feel like a lot of other people do the same. Like, I was listening to a podcast before even started my Instagram account or even had like the inkling that I would be a seller. And Dan and Travis from Going Twice, that's what they said. They were like, we don't need to keep the first ed Charizard. We don't need to keep the first edition Neo Genesis box. We held it. It's cool. On to the next person. So I love that.
Yeah, I also got this sentiment from a comic book YouTube channel. I think Swaggle House said it. It was like, you want to be the dealer who sells the cool stuff. If you just have it all in a closet somewhere, then what is your inventory? Don't you want people to come to your store and be like, whoa, he has all this crazy stuff. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So yeah, that kind of pushed me too. That sentiment of like, the coolest thing you could do as a dealer is get a sale for a first edition Charizard, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's a really I like that one too. You want to sell the good stuff. And I guess do you feel that way? Like, are you really excited when you get like a sick card that you know is going to grade well because you're like, "Oh man, I can't wait to offer this to my customers."
every time. And I love when it's a huge margin so I could give a good deal too, you know?
Hmm.
Like, so it's like if I get lucky on a grade and it gets a 10 and I thought it was going to get a 9, like the buyer is also going to get a good, a good piece of that too. So it does. I love that. I love that's like the part of it that is fun for me is finding the raw cards, grading them, taking that chance. And sometimes it works out really. I mean, sometimes you get destroyed, but sometimes you get lucky or the card is nicer than you may have even estimated because you are thinking trying to be conservative and not protect your margin and everything, and then it just turns out to be like this insane card, and it's just yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
I love having it when something is coming in that's great. I am excited to see it like every time, you know.
absolutely. So, as a dealer, I'm sure you do a lot of grading yourself, obviously. Do you have like a company that you prefer the most? And I guess if you do, what are the reasons?
Now I primarily grade with PSA because simply they get the highest premium. It's just I would grade with whichever I grade with both CGC and PSA, not so much Beckett. I actually sent a manga submission into Beckett
Ooh,
recently, which is interesting. A lot of first edition mangas that I had been picking up over time. That then I was just okay, it's time to do this. Um, but I've never sent cars into Beckett for grading. Not that I'm against it. I did start with CGC mostly because I had an account already from grading comics. So my first few submissions of cars just was easy to send to CGC. But eventually, I just noticed that CGC cards get like 30% to 40% less than PSA very often. And to protect the business, I do have to primarily send to PSA.
oh yeah.
Um, For example, like a vintage Japanese 9 of like any card in a CGC case is getting like $20 less, you
Ooh,
know? And so it becomes like not really worth it to sell. And maybe that's a little bit of an estimation. Like I don't want to be so stringent, and some cards do get closer, and the gold labels get sometimes more than the PSA 10. But as a seller, I've noticed like where my PSA 10s sell, my CGC 10s just only get offers at like 30. They don't, you know what I
yep.
mean? I have to always come down to move it. I always have to come down a little to move it. And people are starting to use that against you too. Not against you, within the negotiations. It shouldn't sound so negative, but I was at a live event and someone came up to me and they were like, look, you have the PSA price on it. Will you come down to the CGC price? And it's just like,
Ooh,
oh man, like, is this now? This is going to be, everyone's going to start looking at it this way and expecting to get that percentage less. That means that I probably need to move toward, I just kind of have to transition into more PSA. I do have the submission at CGC right now, but mostly PSA.
gotcha. Yeah, it if it makes sense, it makes sense, especially from a business standpoint. Um, so I guess in your opinion, do you feel like do you feel like people then like to buy the card, or do you feel like for the most part people like to buy the holder?
People buy the grade. Like in comics, people always say buy the book, not the grade. People don't buy the book. People don't buy the card. At high end cards, excuse me, they will buy the card. They will make sure that the card is the
Hmm.
grade. But on a day to day basis, like people just want PSA 10s. That's what I've noticed more than anything.
Yeah,
Just saying like a PSA 10 blank, that's like what people want to say. They want to be able to have the PSA 10 if they're a graded collector. A lot of people are just raw collectors. They might buy the 9 and crack it out, and they got a steal. Honestly, that's, you know what I
yeah,
mean. But or buy the 8 and crack it out is usually a good thing to. Not the 9. The 9 sometimes holds a premium, but the 10, yeah, people love to buy the
mm.
10. That's just the way it is for sure.
Oh yeah,
And a lot of times, I've seen, just watch it. Like people will buy it, just it says 10 on the front. They don't even look at the back to see if it has like whitening or anything. You know
yep,
what I mean?
oh yeah,
You can just see it.
yeah. So I guess do you sell mostly graded, or do you sell raw too, and that sells just as well for you?
I sell mostly graded. I do buy raw collections when they come up, but I do a lot of now. I've kind of transitioned into buying like either big lots of vintage or buying just bulk modern liquid cards, grading them and selling
Hmm.
them. If that makes sense. Like
Oh yeah,
high demand, modern. Try to find the nicest ones you like. Send them to PSA. When they come back, sell them. That's kind of the name of the game right now for
for
me.
sure.
As well as just sniping auctions and just looking for high grade raw vintage to raw to sell as graded later, like whatever you got to do.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like the slabs. There's also a lot less subjectivity when you sell raw. People will come back sometimes, and I've never really had it happen too much, but I think it eliminates a lot of the subjectivity between the seller and the buyer.
yeah. You don't.
Where it's like if it's a 10, like you said, buy the card, not the grade, but you know, it is like at least a third party said it's pretty close.
Yeah, not as big of a chance of someone coming back, I suppose, and leaving a negative
Of
feedback
ripping someone.
or being like,
Yeah, and it's not even, yeah, it's just like, it just makes it
yeah,
easy selling it graded for me. It comes from it comes from being like a comic dealer before it. Like selling raw comics is like, can be tiresome sometimes. Like, a lot of times, the difference between three dings, someone might think they're, you it should be $30 less or whatever. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like trying to find that middle ground with the buyers. It's easier to just have a third party say, okay, it's a 4.0,
yep,
and then that's the price. But I usually undergrade when I grade raw too. Like I usually undergrade so that the buyer is always happy. And so I usually don't have that problem, but in that world, then why aren't I just sending the card to be graded? You
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
know?
Yeah. So I guess how do you think being on Instagram has helped you? Like, do you think being on Instagram helps as your business? Just helps you like share your passion for Pokemon? Like, what do you like most about running like vintage packs, I suppose?
Yeah, it's kind of just like the advertising slash meeting people and just having friends in the community. It like kind of encompasses both. Because I have found a few like repetitive buyers through Instagram who buy from me pretty
Nice.
often, some of which have become close friends of mine also. But I also have dozens of people I talk to every week on Instagram who I've bought from or they've never even bought from me and they're just my
Yeah.
friends. So I like having that outlet of like inadvertent advertising. Like I don't really advertise my listings that much or do anything like that. It's kind of just like, hey, I'm a Pokemon person. Check out these cards, free giveaways, and also here's a link to my eBay, you
Yeah.
know, if you want. But it's not like no pressure though, you
Yeah.
know. I don't want it to be all about the sales. I want it to be more about the cards. And then if you'd like and you like what you see, these cards are also on my eBay,
Hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
dude. Yeah.
And I used to do it different. I used to put the price on every single listing, but I didn't really like it. I was like, I don't really like the way this looks. I'd rather it just be a funny quote or an anecdote about my past in Pokemon, and that's for the people, and it's like free entertainment almost. And if you just happen to like the card, you could find it on my eBay,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I love the way you've kind of got it going. I love like just basically like a pun or a short play on words for every card. I think that's so fun and I love stuff like that. So, yeah, and I've loved, obviously getting to chat with you a little bit, do a little back and forth. So, yeah, that's a great way to, spread the business and spread the community.
Yeah, and you just get little things like this out of it too. You get to meet a cool guy, do a cool podcast. Like it's not the Instagram is far less about the business than the
Yeah,
eBay is, you know. The Instagram is more about just having like a creative outlet within Pokemon, you know?
absolutely.
And it just also sometimes I may post like, here's a deal on this card if someone wants it, but I really rarely even do
Yeah.
that, you
I
know?
was gonna say, I don't know, like even since I've been following you, and I think it's been a pretty long time. I don't think I've seen you like advertise anything for sale, honestly. Just seen your posts, really,
Yeah. And I kind of like it that
for
way.
sure. So, yeah, just kind of gonna.
It is a little,
Oh,
yeah.
no, go ahead.
No, no, go
Oh,
ahead.
no, I was just gonna wrap it up and ask you one last question. So, if you got another comment before that,
Sure. I was just going to say it gets tiring a lot. There's so many advertisements for cards on
yep,
Instagram that I just like the fact that it's just not like that at all on the page. I'd rather not be in that vortex. That's it.
yeah, yeah. I feel like if you want to do sales on Instagram, you kind of have to run like a sales page almost, or else it's a little rough. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess one last question I always like to ask people, you've clearly been in this like hobby for a while, you've been in the business for a while of Pokemon. What is a tip you want to give to someone who just started collecting like last week? New collector 2024, what do you think they should know?
Honestly, it's the same answer everyone else probably gives. You got to buy what you love. Buy the thing that you genuinely like, not the thing that other people are telling you you should like or what where the hype is at. I mean, if that's what you like, that's what you like. But the most success I've ever found with buying a collectible has been buying the thing that I thought was cool that nobody was looking at the time. Those are and I'm not saying it's about the money. It's not, but just buy what you like, follow your heart, and that's literally the best thing you can do, I think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, people do give that answer a lot, but I feel like can't nail it home enough. So, you know.
It's just true. Like anytime I've ever bought or tried to like be part of the cycle that didn't feel genuine to me, I didn't feel good about what I had. But whenever I go and I find something and I feel like, whoa, this is like the thing I really like, even if nobody else thinks this is cool, even if
Mhm.
nobody else has it, those are the things that have lasted forever in my collection. Whether they went up in value, down in value, or those are always the things that stay around. So if you're new to collecting and you want to feel like good about all your purchases, just follow your heart. It's really that simple, as cheesy as that
Oh
sounds. Like
yeah. No, no. I love it. I love it. It is feel like people like to throw the word cheesy around for stuff like that, but it's just the truth. You gotta. So, but all right. One last question if you don't mind, because why not?
yeah,
But
go for it. Let's go.
what does a Pokemon mean to you? Clearly it's better your life for, you continued playing the games. You said it never really fell off. What is Pokemon meant to you?
It's like the beginning of what would be one of the biggest characteristics about me. It is like that, like collecting of those 150 Pokemon in 1999 triggered like so many other collecting habits and journeys and adventures. And I think the reason why I want to come back to making the whole business about Pokemon is because that's actually where it all started. And to me, it's everything to my collecting and selling journey. It's like the
Hmm.
root of it, and it's everything is branched out from there.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's super important to me in retrospect. The more I thought about it, and I thought about it a lot to kind of prepare for this conversation too.
I'm sorry. What was that last part? I think I cut out there for a second.
Yeah, it did cut out for a second. That it really did start
Yeah.
like all this for me, you know. Because from there, I did collect a little bit of baseball with my dad after that, and then I started convincing my dad to buy comics for me on eBay when I was like way too young, like obviously too young
Uh-huh.
to have my own eBay. With the foresight of keeping those books in as perfect condition as I could, and I got them graded a few years ago, and they're like 9.6s and 9.8s, which are like or nines and tens basically
Oh
of
wow.
comics that I kept all the way from when I was like 9, 10 years old. I had them in college with me in boxes, like the whole way they came. And like I realized it all started with like these cards that I was collecting with my mom that must have triggered some kind of like chemical sentiment in me for collecting, because it's that close bond that I had as a kid doing that. And then my father too. I remember I had my tonsils removed when I was a kid, and it was like somewhat traumatic for me. And I would always gag. Like I had a really difficult time getting the medicine down for
Hmm.
it. And the way that they eventually got me to take the medicine was opening Neo Genesis packs in front of me to distract me while they like forced it down my throat. So like
Yeah.
collecting cards is just always been a part of it for me. You know, it's just always been there every step of the way with my family, my parents, like, and yeah, it's just this sentimental root that created all these other pathways and all these other branches in my
Yeah.
life, you know?
Absolutely. I definitely feel that to some extent, and I appreciate you sharing all that. I mean, that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of trying to make my way into making a livelihood with Pokemon as well, and you know, I I love that. I love that it's come from such a young age and stuck with you and so many other people. That's awesome, dude. Thank you for sharing that.
For you. Yeah, thank you for letting me share it. And if you're trying to start up, you got an ally in me. If you ever have any questions, you ever need any help, like I know I know how to navigate the online sales world, so I'm here for you if you
Dude,
need
that
anything
means
for
the world
sure.
to me. I appreciate that so much because, it's daunting. It's daunting to say the least. I've been trying to like take steps and, the first step, what you got to do, but, continuing to do that and knowing where to go after those first steps is not easy. So I really appreciate that, Rob,
Yeah, 100%. Give me a, we could talk sometime off podcast about it if you need to. Just
for
let me know.
sure.
100%.
But yeah, that's about all I had to ask you. Just wanted to say, really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. You're such a cool dude. I feel like everyone in this community has been just as awesome to talk to on here as they are on Instagram. And, so thank you for your time. This is, like I said, Rob, Vintage Packs on Instagram, Island Collect on eBay. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being so cool, and thank you for giving all of us like this platform to just talk about whatever we want. So
Oh,
I
of
appreciate you so
course.
much.
All right. Thank you for watching, everyone. Peace.